This presentation explains how the Buy Canadian movement has gone beyond slogans and created real, measurable gains for Canadian food and grocery manufacturing. Canadians have made a conscious choice to favor domestic products, and retailers have responded by giving Canadian-made goods more shelf space and stronger support. As a result, Canadian brands are shipping more product, plants are running at higher utilization, and local producers are gaining market access that used to be dominated by imports. Together, these trends show that patriotic purchasing is reinforcing Canada's industrial base and delivering concrete economic benefits in communities across the country. It is partly true that the Buy Canadian movement has driven visible gains in Canadian food and grocery manufacturing. There is clear evidence that Canadian-made grocery and household brands have enjoyed higher sales, stronger shelf presence, and increased shipments as retailers and consumers shift their preferences. Retailers have deliberately sourced more from Canadian suppliers, some provinces have reduced or removed U.S. products from their shelves, and Canadian brands have reported strong demand growth. At the same time, companies almost never say publicly that they have expanded a specific plant solely because of the movement. What we do have, and it is significant, are documented surges in output, larger retailer orders, and better market access for domestic producers that strongly imply higher plant utilization and, in some cases, pressure to expand capacity. Royale, operated by Irving Personal Care, is one of the clearest examples of the Buy Canadian effect. As retailers turned away from U.S. diaper brands, Canadian-made Royale diapers saw domestic shipments quadruple. The manufacturer emphasized that it is the only major diaper made in Canada, and the wave of Buy Canadian sentiment dramatically increased demand for its products. Even though the company did not announce a plant expansion formally tied to this movement, a fourfold jump in shipments clearly signals much higher throughput on the production lines and significantly more work for the Canadian factory that supplies these diapers. Chapman's ice cream provides another strong case of gains linked to Buy Canadian choices. During the Buy Canadian surge, Chapman's reported a sales increase of around 10%, with a significant portion of that growth driven by Canadians deliberately reaching for Canadian brands in the freezer aisle. The company's Markdale, Ontario facility was already a large operation, but this intentional shift in consumer behavior increased line utilization and helped secure Chapman's position as a flagship Canadian food manufacturer. The example shows how even a single-digit increase in sales, when tied to a large production base, translates into real additional output and jobs. In the beverage alcohol sector, provincial policy choices and consumer sentiment worked together to support domestic producers. Several provinces removed or reduced U.S. bourbon and other American spirits from their shelves in response to tariffs and Buy Canadian attitudes. That freed up valuable shelf space that was reallocated to Canadian distilleries and wineries. The result was more visibility and more volume for Canadian spirits, wines, and craft beverages, directly strengthening demand for domestically produced alcohol and increasing output in Canadian beverage manufacturing facilities. Loblaws responded to the Buy Canadian shift by reshaping its national product mix. Reuters reported a dramatic reshuffling of shelves, as Loblaws replaced certain U.S. goods with Canadian-made alternatives across the country. This change was not just symbolic. When a major retailer like Loblaws rewrites its planograms to feature domestic products, it necessarily sends larger, more frequent orders to Canadian suppliers. Those orders translate into higher production volumes in Canadian food processing plants, from frozen foods and snacks to dairy and packaged meals, and help anchor good manufacturing jobs in Canada. Sobeys and its parent Empire also saw clear signs that U.S.-sourced products were losing ground while Canadian-made alternatives gained traction. As Canadian shoppers shifted away from American imports, domestic products captured more shelf share and more of the grocery basket. This pattern implies stronger domestic manufacturing demand across key categories such as bakery, packaged foods, dairy, and meat processing. Even without headline-grabbing expansion announcements, these incremental gains add up to more production runs, more stable plant schedules, and a sturdier base of Canadian manufacturing activity. The experience of Grime Eater Products Limited shows how the Buy Canadian movement has opened doors even outside the core food category. This Canadian household product manufacturer reported that the Buy Canadian wave helped them attract interest from national retailers. Although their products sit in the household aisle, not the grocery aisle, the same patriotic logic applies. Buyers looking for Canadian-made alternatives are more willing to list domestic brands. The company explicitly links this change in retailer behavior to the Buy Canadian movement, illustrating how it helps smaller Canadian manufacturers gain national shelf presence and scale their production. Across the broader packaged food sector, the Buy Canadian movement has been reflected in retailer-level data and analysis. Supply Professional, drawing on retail reporting, notes that Loblaws saw about a 10% rise in sales of Canadian-made goods. That increase is supplied directly by food manufacturers operating in Canada. For those producers, that uplift is not just a marketing win, it is real demand-side pressure that pushes plants toward higher utilization. More shifts, longer production runs, and higher throughput follow, reinforcing employment and investment in Canadian food processing facilities. Liquor boards in several provinces further reinforce this trend by actively prioritizing Canadian alcohol producers. As part of Buy Canadian sentiment and in response to tariff politics, some provincial boards favored domestic spirits and other Canadian-made beverages over U.S. imports. This preference increased domestic beverage manufacturing output, providing additional volume and revenue to Canadian distilleries, breweries, and wineries. It also helped many regional producers grow their brand recognition and reach, translating patriotic consumer and policy choices into concrete production gains. The Buy Canadian movement has not only benefited national brands, it has also delivered measurable gains to smaller producers. Local and niche food processors, including artisan cheese makers, microdairies, local sauce makers, and other regional packaged goods companies, have reported increased sales tied to Canadian consumers choosing homegrown options. Industry interviews, including those cited in Supply Professional, point to regional loyalty as a powerful driver. When shoppers look for "made in Canada" and "made in their province," these producers see more volume, better margins, and a stronger base for maintaining and expanding regional manufacturing operations. Retail buyers themselves have acknowledged how the Buy Canadian movement has changed their approach. Reuters quotes buyers across Canada who say they are actively reviewing their listings to identify Canadian-made alternatives to imported products. This is a crucial structural shift, because it changes the gatekeeping function of retail procurement in favor of domestic producers. By giving more Canadian companies a chance at national distribution, buyers are effectively increasing domestic output and helping Canadian plants operate closer to capacity, even in the absence of big public announcements about new buildings or equipment. Taken together, these examples show that it is partly true, and economically meaningful, that the Buy Canadian movement has driven gains in Canadian manufacturing in the food and grocery space. Companies rarely issue press releases saying, "We expanded our plant because of Buy Canadian," but the underlying signals are clear. Domestic producers are shipping more product, retailers are prioritizing Canadian suppliers, provinces are reallocating shelf space, and multiple brands have recorded major demand surges. All of this results in real increases in plant utilization, stronger competitive positioning for Canadian manufacturers, and a meaningful economic impact even without explicit capital expansion announcements. The evidence for this analysis comes from several independent and reputable sources. Reuters reporting by Cavale, Balu, and DeNapoli documents how the Buy Canadian movement has led retailers to turn away from U.S. products, how Royale's shipments quadrupled, and how Canadian-made brands gained ground on shelves. Additional Reuters coverage by Mystery provides detailed data on Loblaws' earnings and the shift toward local and discount Canadian brands, underscoring the retailer-level impact of consumer preferences. The article by Panetta in Supply Professional and The Conversation offers a broader view of the retail landscape, showing how Canadian retailers have seen a surge in domestic sales, how they have reshuffled shelves toward Canadian goods, and how smaller and niche producers have benefited. Together, these sources provide the factual backbone for the conclusions in this presentation and demonstrate that the Buy Canadian movement's impact is visible in hard data, not just rhetoric. For more fact-based content about Canadian politics, democratic health, economic trends, and rhetorical analysis, the Facts for Canadians platforms offer ongoing resources and educational material. These outlets aim to strengthen public understanding, improve media literacy, and support evidence-based democratic engagement.